I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Knock knock, Avon calling, Kiki.
Yeah, I already bought at somewhere else.
Yes. We are talking about the 1990 Tim Burton movie, Edward Scissorhands. This has been in our list for a while, and we decided now is the right time to talk about it, because if Die Hard can be a Christmas film, so can Edward Scissorhands, damn it.
Well, I mean, this arguably has more direct talk about Christmas than Die Hard in some respects.
I mean, the entire third act takes place on Christmas.
Yeah.
And this movie came out on Christmas, 1990. So, yeah, and the opening logo with the Fox logo is covered in snow. So, yeah, they were marketing this as a Christmas movie. I'm counting it as a Christmas movie.
It's always been a Christmas movie to me.
Yep. You know, it's another Tim Burton movie where you have an outsider character just trying to fit in with a, quote, normal family, and shenanigans ensue, which is a lot of the early Tim Burton movies.
I mean, honestly, it's even some of the later Tim Burton movies too.
If you take away the remakes, I would say.
Yeah. The thing is that this was... Tim Burton really became the golden boy when Batman hit it big. Mm-hmm. We've talked so much about how, with the exception of the Christopher Reeve Superman movie, that superhero films just were not sellers. You know, nobody expected them to do well. And then Tim Burton got a hold of Batman, and that was, you know, that's like 1989, and it just goes huge. Mm-hmm. That was the biggest thing ever right then.
And every other studio tried to do their own comic book movie to varying degrees of success, including Disney.
Yeah. And, you know, we talked about this a lot when we have talked about MCU stuff, and, you know, go back and listen to Iron Man, and we kind of go through the whole shebang about it. But, Warner Brothers, that did Batman, had also worked with Tim Burton when he did Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Mm-hmm. And so that was two really good, solid movies he had done for them, back to back. He had also
Beetlejuice.
He also done Beetlejuice for them, yeah. And that was a hit, but kind of lesser of the hits in there, because Pee-wee and Batman, of course, are both known properties. Beetlejuice was a new invention, you know.
Now it's a musical.
And now it's a musical. But the the thing is that they were telling Tim Burton, like, hey, what do you want to do next? We'll greenlight whatever. You've just done 3 big movies for us. And he was like, I want to do a movie about a weird kind of Frankenstein monster dude with scissors for hands. And they were like, that's a little too weird for us. And they were like, maybe see where you can chop that around and come back to us with your next idea. So this was the movie that proved a little too weird for Warner Brothers. After having done Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Beetlejuice, and Tim Burton's Batman, all of which are very strange films. Mm-hmm. This was the movie that kind of made them go, yeah, little too weird, pass. Fortunately for everyone and this podcast, it ended up at Fox. Yay!
Yep, and now Disney owns this movie.
And now Disney. Although right now it is currently streaming on Max, which is part of the Warner Brother Discovery line, but it's still it was a Fox thing.
For now, it's there for now.
Yeah,
who knows?
I'm sure that after whatever streaming contract they have runs out, because it seems that right now Max has most of the Tim Burton stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that they probably just had a contract to bulk stream a lot of the Tim Burton stuff, and it just hasn't run out yet. Anyway, Warner Brothers was like, yeah, don't go over to Fox and make that weirdo movie. Come back to us and make, Batman and Beetlejuice 2 and, whatever you want, just not that weirdo scissor guy movie. And Tim Burton was like, no, I really want to make the scissor guy movie. Because apparently this one was like, he had created it as a kid. And he really had spent like years wanting to make this film. So I don't really know why that this particular story was so close to his heart. But this was just the thing that Tim Burton really, really, really wanted to make.
Maybe he saw himself in this story. I mean, there's a lot of the weirdo goth boy characters that kind of just look like Tim Burton.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing that's probably it. He did grow up as like the weirdo in a suburb. Mm-hmm. So, it's probably a lot of that. And you get your typical like jock bully kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's from his childhood too. But it's fine. Mm-hmm. I absolutely loved this movie growing up. I don't know what
I watched this a lot. I mean, I own this movie, so when we decided to do this, I just watched my copy of the movie.
Yeah, I think I had it on VHS and I never upgraded to the DVD. So, that's on me. That's on me. So I needed to go to the other place for streaming, but yeah. This is the first time that Tim Burton would work with Johnny Depp.
Wouldn't be the last.
Yeah, definitely not the last. But Johnny Depp at this point in time was primarily known as a teen idol because he was mostly known for 21 Jump Street.
He had just done Cry Baby.
Yeah, he had just done Cry Baby, which is, it's off the beaten track, but his character in there was very much like an Elvis sort of character.
Greaser guy, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a weirdo character. It was for a weirdo director, of course. But it was very much in line of the, sexy teen idol kind of
bad boy.
Yeah, bad boy kind of thing. But yeah, most people knew Johnny Depp for 21 Jump Street at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
He was not known for being Johnny Depp, the actor that takes the weird roles.
Mm-hmm.
And this was his first break into, let me showcase what I can do,
And it's really weird because Edward rarely speaks and rarely emotes, but you can understand everything this character is feeling.
Yeah. The movie really depends on that chemistry between the two leads.
Winona Ryder.
Yeah, between Winona Ryder and Johnny Depp. They were actually a couple in real life at the time that this was filmed. So that probably helped. A lot of young actresses really, really wanted the part for this. But Tim Burton really wanted Winona Ryder because he had already worked with her in Beetlejuice.
And she plays the opposite character from Lydia in Beetlejuice.
Yeah, Lydia was strange and unusual, and Kim in this is the cheerleader.
The pretty girl. She's dating the jock, yeah.
Yeah, she's the popular high school girl. Which was not Winona Ryder's forte, I think we can say, as far as how she was cast in a lot of things at the time. So, playing slightly against the type she would normally be cast in.
I mean, she had just done Heathers the previous year.
Yeah, and she was kind of a weirdo in Heathers. Yeah, I think it's safe to say. But there's a lot of people in this that are cast against type. Like, I mean, Anthony Michael Hall shows up as the jock villain.
And he was just in Breakfast Club.
Yeah, I mean, this is the supreme nerd of the 80s.
16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Weird Science.
Yeah. He is the supreme nerd of John Hughes films. And suddenly here he is as
the jock.
The bully jock.
The a-hole boyfriend.
And let me tell you, if you grew up at the time we did, and you were used to seeing Anthony Michael Hall as the nerdy, beat-up kid in the John Hughes movies, and then you're like, oh, let's watch this weird gothic movie about Scissorhand guy, And Anthony Michael Hall shows up as the bully football player.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going into this movie knowing nothing about the movie other than Johnny Depp, Anthony Michael Hall, one plays a weird guy and one plays a jock, you're going to get the two actors flipped.
Oh, I didn't even know Anthony Michael Hall was in this movie until I turned on this movie and I saw his name in the credits. And I went, oh, I like Anthony Michael Hall. He's going to be fun. And no, not fun at all. I mean, good actor, good character. You know, he does it well, but like this is brain melting casting if you are a kid in 1990 who has just watched John Hughes movies.
Yeah.
You know, like and like Kathy Baker who plays Joyce, the oversexed housewife who keeps trying to seduce all the men. Mm-hmm. That was not her type at all. Like everything else she had been in, she was a very kind of straight-laced, you know, professional woman. And so this part in here where she was just like the town hussy, you know, that was not what you're expecting from her, you know? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of them in here that you're just like, wait a minute. Why are you playing this character?
Tim Burton saw something in these actors, I guess, you know, wanted them to play against type.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is especially about Anthony Michael Hall is as he got older, he kind of did become like a low-key gym bro. Like just the guy, you know? Mm-hmm. Like he kind of became the cool guy, sort of, you know.
Maybe he got tired of playing nerds.
I mean, it's not like, I don't think it was a professional thing. I think that's just who he is. I don't think he was ever a nerd. I think he was just kind of skinny and nerdy looking.
Like, so he bulked up.
Yeah, I mean, I think he just, you know, he wanted to be, you know.
He wanted different roles. He wanted a different look for himself. It happens.
Yeah. But if you see him now, like, he kind of just always, you know, he wears like leather jackets and he hits the gym and like all that kind of stuff, you know. Like, so it is kind of funny, but yeah, so other than just kind of the casting being all weird and against type, there is one person who's playing exactly their type. And that was the role of the inventor that creates Edward was specifically written for Vincent Price. They were hoping to get Vincent Price.
The legend. This is his final major role in a film.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, it wasn't intended to be that, no. But it just happened that he passed on. I think before this even came out. No, it was 93. It was just after. Yeah. So, yeah. This movie is so sad with kind of what happens with that character. Mm-hmm. And Vincent Price pulled that off so well because you expect him to be, you know, you see Edward at the beginning and he is this rather menacing looking creature. And you're thinking, like, who would create such an awful thing?
Mm-hmm.
And then you discover kind of what was going on and how it all came together and how the inventor treated Edward,
in the flashback scenes, the inventor is treating Edward like a son.
Yeah, he's reading to him.
He's teaching him teaching him etiquette, reading poetry to him, educating him the best way he can.
And he has a plan to take Edward from, these kind of early stages. And eventually, we see the drawings. Mm. And Edward is eventually supposed to be this very sleek gentleman, in the kind of almost Victorian ideal of a gentleman, And so you do know that he had a plan and that he wants to make this creation and take him out into society. Like, he never meant for Edward to be alone in that mansion. Mm-hmm. It was just, the unfortunate circumstance that he ended up like having a heart attack or whatever.
It's weird because the flashback scene where the inventor dies is right as he's hugging Kim. So my thought was that he tried to hug his father and accidentally stabbed him.
Well, no, I mean, you see that it's at Christmas. Mm-hmm. And the inventor says, well, it's not quite Christmas yet, but here I have this for you. And he brings out the hands that he's intending to attach to Edward to replace the scissors. And that is such a beautiful scene to me of Edward gently caressing the hands and giving him a little kiss. And you could tell how happy he is. And then you see the heart attack start to hit the inventor. And Edward does not start to move until the inventor goes to fall backwards. And Edward, in trying to catch the inventor, ends up stabbing through the hands and destroying them. And then he knows that he's dead when he touches his face and accidentally cuts him. And,
there's no reaction.
There's no reaction. There's no, and that's why he tells Diane Wiest later that,
he never woke up.
His father never woke up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's such a sad moment that you see that he was so close. Hmm. Like a couple of hours later and he would have been a complete man. Like he would have had the hands finished. But that whole bit with Edward remembering what it was like with his father, and Vincent Price is there's no malice in him. Mm-hmm. He's such a sweet man.
What if Dr. Frankenstein actually loved his creation instead of detested it?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that this is a gothic love story.
Mm.
And Frankenstein was, among early Gothic literature. And the tragedy of that story is that it talks about, like, Victor is a father to his creation in the literal sense of he created life in a fatherly sense, but he's not a father in an emotional sense.
Mm.
He creates life and is immediately disgusted by it and abandons it. And that's where all the horror comes from. Is not that he created the quote-unquote monster, is that he does this creation and then he immediately abandons it. And so the creation has no idea how to be in the world and has no real sense of emotional intelligence and sense of place, and and all of that is what causes the horror and the tragedy in the novel. Is it's not that the creation is evil in any way, it's that the abandonment causes all the problems. So the point of the original story is less like, don't create monsters, but it's like, hey, when you give life to something, you are responsible for more than just the birth of it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to care for it and teach it and stuff. And we see that the inventor is actually doing that. He doesn't just create Edward and then be like, there's the door.
He's teaching.
Yeah, he's teaching. And he's not just teaching like basic things. He's teaching etiquette. He's teaching poetry. He's teaching, it's okay to laugh. This is funny. This is, but the only problem is that, death takes him from Edward before Edward is ready. And there's no community there to help Edward.
We don't know how long Edward's been alone. We don't know. Because Edward is an artificial creation. Not possibly machine.
Yeah, we don't really know exactly what makes Edward tick.
At the very beginning, we see the inventor with a steel frame of a person. And as we flip through the pages of that book, we see it, going from mechanical person to whatever Ed is, to whatever whatever the plan was for Ed to become. Like I said, that gentleman figure.
Yeah, all we know about him is that he doesn't age.
Mm.
But the thing is that he does bleed and he does hurt.
Mm. He does scar.
He does scar, So there's some kind of organic over him. But the we never know, which I like better, that we don't entirely know what's going on. But I do love the weird kitschiness of the inventor's mansion. I love the cookie making machine.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it just, everything about it is so cute.
How he takes that heart-shaped cookie and put it right on the machine body of that would become Ed, as if giving him a heart. Very Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. I mean, everything about the set design for this is just, ugh, so great. And I love how there is the beautiful candy colored suburb.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, oh, look at the creepy castle on the hill up there.
I bet I can sell some cosmetics to the people who live there.
Yeah, I just, you gotta love Peg and her wonderful optimism. Because that really, we've got the bookends of old Kim telling the story. Mm-hmm. They never say exactly where this is. Of course, it's filmed in Florida. But they never tell exactly, where this is supposed to be.
It's somewhere that never snows. That's the only hint that we get. It never snows there. So it could be Florida, could be California, could be Arizona for all we know.
Yeah, well, the only thing we get is that you can see the ocean from it.
So it's either West or East Coast.
Yeah. So it's either Florida or California. Take your pick. But it was filmed in Florida. They took over an entire part of a suburb, repainted it and everything to get that candy color stuff. But that, other than the bookend thing of like, let me tell you why it snows and all that with Kim, starting out with Peg and her like, ding dong Avon calling, bit, and her going up and just failing to sell anything.
All of her neighbors are tired of her trying to sell they're trying to sell her cosmetics to them. It's like, I've never bought from you before. I'm not going to buy from you now. Yeah, but I'm going to keep trying.
Yeah, and I love her going and giving the demo to the teenager, and then the teenager's like, you don't actually think I have money, right? That's got to be my favorite one. Because I went to so many Avon things as a teenager, and I never knew why, like, like my aunts or like, parents' friends or stuff would like invite me to these Avon parties, and they would always like make my face up and everything. They would be like, oh, this color looks perfect on you. And I would just look at them and I would be like, I'm 14. I don't have a job. Like, where do you think I'm getting money from? Like, thanks for inviting me to your party and putting goop on my face, but I got like $2 in my pocket. You think that's buying your expensive ass lipstick? Like,
yeah.
So yeah, it was funny because I went to a bunch of like Avon parties and stuff, but like I never owned any of this stuff because it was like, sorry, I'm a literal child. I have no money.
But I know she goes up there. I do like this transition because it looks very gothic horror type of castle. There's the wild grass in front of the gate and the dead trees outside of the gate. But once she passes through that gate, there's this beautiful, well-kept garden and these grass sculptures. It's very beautiful. Again, it's very Wizard of Oz. But yeah, here is this weird looking pale man dressed in black with no one to care for him. And it just breaks Diane West's heart, Peg, as she's called in the movie, that she just takes this man in. You know, you're going to live with me. You have no mother. You have no father. You're all alone here. I'm going to take you to see my family. And a typical, you know, I mean, Kiki, I assume you live in this kind of a neighborhood. Here is this married woman that everyone in the neighborhood knows, bringing home a strange-looking man, and the gossip patrol is out in full force. Every woman in town is calling, oh, hey, Peg's brought home a strange-looking man. He's brought home this weird guy. What's going on? What's this weird guy about?
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely more common then. I feel like people don't care as much now. But yeah, I think now everybody would be sitting in their homes and, you know, messaging each other.
Yeah.
This, like, I feel like this is some next door stuff or something, you know?
Yeah.
Now, but yeah, I've lived in a lot of gossipy neighborhoods before. And this was when I watched this, I was like, oh yeah, I've known these women.
Yeah, as soon as the day breaks for the next day, everyone in town is getting into their car to drive to Peg's house so they could see this weird man she's brought home. And it's very quick how the neighborhood comes to welcome Edward. Yes, he's a weird looking guy. He has scissors for hands. But he quickly shows that he has talent. Like, he's able to show that he's the one that's been cutting these hedge sculptures that's been in the front of that Gothic castle at the beginning of the movie. And then now everyone in town wants their hedges to be cut by Edward. He shows that he can do more with his scissors than just cut hedges. He can groom a dog. And now everyone in town wants him to groom their dog. And now he has a talent for cutting hair. And now he's the town hairdresser, or the neighborhood hairdresser. To the point where they encourage him to, maybe you should start a business. And he kind of goes, I mean, that's a good point of the story where he tries to start this hairdressing business, but because he technically does not exist, he was not born, he was created. There's no record of him anywhere. He can't get a loan to start his business.
Yeah, and I love that the banker is all like, oh, you know, just go get a Social Security number, go buy a car, go do all the, you know, and he just says all these things like they're just the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah. Like, you can just go around the corner and get a Social Security number right then and there. Just buy a car without, again, you need information to buy the car, but you need the car to get the information. Huh.
Yeah. The thing is that this is actually a problem in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that you wouldn't think. Where there are some people who like they want to be so off the grid or whatever, that they will do home births and then homeschool their children. And when their kids get like 18 and they want to go out on their own, they discover that their parents never filed a birth certificate for them. And as such, they don't have a social security number. And they were also never in public school. And a lot of them were never like taken to a doctor to get vaccinations or a checkup or anything. And so legally speaking, according to the government, they do not exist. And so they are like, this, where I'm speaking from an American context here. They are technically American citizens that were born on American soil to American parents, but they have no proof of that because their parents never actually filed the correct paperwork. And usually this happens in like, insular religious communities or things like that. Mm-hmm. But like, there's a whole group of people that, they hit 18 or 19 and they want to strike out on their own, or they want to go to college or something like that. And they discover that they can't get a job. They can't get an apartment. They can't, because according to the government, they do not exist, and it's through no fault of their own. Mm. So I actually kind of felt bad for Edward. It was a thing I never really thought of growing up, because I was like, well, this is a fantasy movie and it's not like anybody would ever have this happen to them. But there are actual, like, real people who have this happen to them, and I feel so bad for that. Knowing now, having read the stories of those people and listened to those people speak out on, like, how difficult it is to actually prove that you exist, at, like, 18 to 20, and you don't actually have a paper trail proving you exist, is such a weird, nightmarish situation. So I feel so bad for Edward when I see this now as an adult, knowing the context, when the guy's like, hey, just pop over there and get a social security number and an apartment, buy a car and stuff, easy peasy, and then come back and we'll give you all the money you want for your business. Like, it really does not work like that. But I really like the way that it shows the exploitation of Edward. Like, Peg really does want to just help. That is her initial point. Is she sees this guy that she thinks needs help, and she brings him home without thinking about the consequences. And everyone else in the neighborhood wants to exploit him in some way or another. And Peg just seems completely naive about everything. And it spirals so out of her control. And I think the best thing about it is when Edward ends up on the TV show.
Yeah.
And it's so sad, because that's when, everybody in the neighborhood has discovered that he can make topiaries, and he can, be a dog groomer, and he can make all these wacky haircuts for women, and, and so it ends up on, like, a local TV program, and this one woman in the audience asks, like, hey, would he like to see a surgeon that she thinks could help? And he was like, oh yes, I'd love to talk to him. And then somebody else says, but if you if you get your hands fixed, you'll be just like everybody else. And he's like, yeah, I know. And they're like, but then you won't be special. And, you know, they are saying the quiet part loud, but not in so many words.
You will no longer be unique. You will no longer be of use.
And you will no longer be interesting to us.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't be on TV today if you were a dude with regular hands.
Which he's fine with. He just wants to be a dude, a regular dude.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that he doesn't want to be anybody's, you know, topic of interest. He wants to just
be.
Yeah, he just wants to be a guy. And it's so sad that they're like, okay, but nobody would talk to you or take interest in you or want to be your friend or anything. And I'm thinking, like, yeah, but that's on you, because Peg is the only one that comes to his defense. Of like, he'll always be special, even if he doesn't have scissors for hands. And I think that she's the only one that genuinely means it.
Yeah.
Because everybody in the audience is like, oh, isn't that nice? Yes, of course. He'll always be special. And it's in that way that people say, like, well, everybody's special in their own way. And you know they don't mean it.
But right before this is the beginning of the end, because Kim and her boyfriend Jim have locked themselves out of, I assume it's Jim's house.
Oh, no, it was Kim's house.
Okay. Because she's rummaging through her purse for her keys, and she can't believe she lost her keys. And then Edward comes up, finding a new trick for his scissors in that he can pick locks. So he is able to open up the house front door with his scissors without damaging the lock or scratching anything, which plays into the downfall of Ed in this whole situation, in that Jim is getting insanely jealous over Edward, because Edward it's very obvious he kind of has a crush on Kim, and Kim is starting to, at first she kind of freaks out over Edward because he's pale-faced, he's looking all weird, but then she gets to know the guy. Oh, he's actually a pretty nice guy, and she kind of starts to be friends with him, at least at the beginning. They start to be being friends, and Jim isn't having that. I mean, he laughs when Edward accidentally electrocutes himself when his scissors touch the microphone. He wants to get rid, for lack of a better term, get rid of the competition. So he sets up this situation to get Ed in trouble. They break into Jim's house to steal his father's van so they can go joyriding, only for the alarm system to kick in and lock Edward into the house. And then he gets arrested.
Yeah, and Kim really does want to stay on site to explain to the police what happened. Because she is sort of a good egg. She's a little too...
There's a little naivete in her too.
Yeah, and Jim really is kind of an abusive and controlling boyfriend. And so he's the one that makes
Jim convinces
things.
Jim convinces Kim to get Edward to break them into the house. To which he even says, I knew what house we were breaking into, I only did it because you asked me to.
Yeah, because Jim tells Edward this whole story about, like, these people stole from me and I have to get the stuff back and, all that kind of stuff, when they're really just breaking into Jim's house because he wants to steal from his dad. But Edward says later, yeah, I knew exactly what was going on, But,
it shows that Edward isn't stupid.
Yeah.
He may be a little, awkward, and he doesn't exactly know how to express himself, but he's not an idiot. He knew exactly what was going to happen, but he did it because Kim asked him to, and he would do anything for her.
Yeah, but Edward ends up in jail, and he ends up being let go and the charges dropped because a psychiatrist says that he doesn't understand right from wrong due to all of his years of isolation in the mansion. And apparently Jim kind of convinced his dad to drop the charges because his dad thinks that Edward is mentally incapacitated in some way. Possibly because of that same psychiatrist. So, the problem comes when this becomes the thing that makes Kim break up with her boyfriend. Like, you used him and you left him there, and because of you, now everybody in the neighborhood
hates him.
They hate him now. They're no longer letting him do jobs for them. They don't want him to open up a salon anymore.
They're not even going to come to the annual Christmas party.
Yeah, the family always does a Christmas party, and everybody in the neighborhood comes, and now everybody in the neighborhood is like, oh yeah, we're gonna try to make it, but we've also have other obligations, and we'll try, and yeah. But yeah, it's really sad, but it's also, you can see how fickle the people are,
And we just said it. If he was a normal person, would this neighborhood even care about him? Probably not.
I mean, it would be like a bit of gossip in the neighborhood, because it would be like, okay, why is Peg bringing a guy to live in the house with them? Because I still think that Peg would take pity on him, even if he was fully finished and had hands. She would just see a guy alone up there who is socially awkward and needs a family, and so I think that she would have still brought him down and tried to give him a family and get him settled in society and stuff. But I think that immediately the neighbors would have been like, well, there's that weird guy that Peg brought to live with her family, do you think she's sleeping with him? That would have been the thing. But I don't think that they would have let him do odd jobs and tried to help him start a business, or But now that he's done something to cross a legal line, well, now we can pounce.
In fact, the woman who throws herself at everybody, including Edward, is now changing her story that Edward possibly tried to rape her.
Yeah, she's, we as the audience saw exactly what happened.
She was throwing herself at him.
Yeah. And he was very uncomfortable and did not want that to happen, but also did not understand how to reject her, which is why people say that the only yes is an enthusiastic yes. Like, just saying, like, well, they didn't say no is not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because Edward is very definitely saying no in that scene, even though he doesn't say anything.
He's not interested in her. He has his little crush on Kim.
But also, I think he doesn't understand what she is doing.
Possibly.
There is a very strong possibility that Edward does not understand what sex is.
I don't think his father had taught him that at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very big possibility. Because after that scene, he is spared anything going further because the chair that they are in collapses. At which point, he takes the opportunity to quickly leave. And he goes to the diner nearby where the family is waiting for him, and they say, how did it go? And he was like, oh, the front is very nice, and there's a place where Peg can have a cosmetics counter, and then we went into the back room where there will be storage, and also the woman took her clothes off. And the father, who is the densest person in the planet, just goes like, oh, that's nice. Well, I guess next you'll go to the bank and try to get a loan. And Peg and Kim exchange looks like,
She did what?
okay, we understand what is going on here. We're not sure Edward understands what is going on here. Because he just says it as a very factual but uncomfortable thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do not understand why she took her clothes off, but that is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I do not understand the point of her taking her clothes off, but, So I always read that scene as, like, he was completely unaware of what she was attempting to do. He just knew it made him uncomfortable. The problem is that, now then she tries to become the main character once everybody is like, well, I always had a bad feeling about him, and I always thought that he was going to rob somebody, and
And then you have the one overly religious neighbor. I told you he was the devil.
Yeah. That I love what he ends up doing to her when he, like, gives up on the neighborhood. And he goes and makes the topiary of the demon right outside her window.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been my favorite part of the movie. When he was like, he destroys everything in front of everybody else's house, but he goes and he gets a topiary in front of hers, and it's a demon face.
With the lights.
Well, I think that's just, I've watched it so many times, and I don't think he puts lights in it. I think it's the reflection of the candles inside
That makes it look like demon eyes.
that makes it look like demon eyes. But yeah. The thing is, though, is that, of course, as they're waiting for the people who will never show up to the Christmas party, we have Winona Ryder in that beautiful white dress.
Yeah.
And that is the first time we see snow, because we see the father up on the roof
putting up the Christmas decorations.
Putting up the Christmas decorations and putting up the fake snow on the roof. That, ugly cotton batting that some people in places where it doesn't snow put up on the roof to make it look like snow-covered roof. Here's a hint: it doesn't make your roof look snow-covered. It just gathers rain and leaves and pine straw, and then it becomes disgusting and icky. And don't do that. That stuff is awful. People don't really do that anymore, but it was a much bigger thing in like the 80s and early 90s. I used to hate that stuff being on people's roofs, because, like, the first day it would be like, it's pretty, it's white and fluffy, and it looks like it's snow on your roof. And then, like, it would rain, and then it's like, oh, look, you've got mildew on your roof in the form of cotton batting. And there's bugs all in it, and it's just like brown and gross, and it's awful.
But Edward, he's making this very beautiful ice sculpture
of an angel.
Yeah.
And this is one of the most beautiful scenes ever put to film.
Winona Ryder dancing in the shaved ice, Johnny Depp doing this, making this ice sculpture as the charred, the ice chunks turn into snow, and there's Winona Ryder dancing in the snow.
And one of the best pieces of music Danny Elfman has ever composed.
Yes, Danny Elfman, because this is a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah. They were a couple of films into their collaboration by this point.
Yeah.
But that, like, choral piece and her in that white dress, smiling, twirling around in the chunks of ice as it falls, and it just, everything about that is the most beautiful, magical bit of film, so that is just absolutely wonderful, and I love it. I love everything about it. No notes.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect scene. Perfect bit of film. But of course it ends kind of tragically as Jim shows up and is immediately like,
"What are you doing up there?
Hey, butthole, stop making the most beautiful scene ever put to film."
Which causes Ed to kind of drop his hand, and Kim has her hands up in the snow, and Edward accidentally cuts Kim's hand.
Yeah. And as we find out later, it is an incredibly superficial cut. Because Peg cleans her up and she's like, "Oh, look, it's nothing, and
it's only a flesh wound."
Yeah, it's only a flesh wound. It appears to be just a tiny little nick, and it's fine. But
Jim is using this as an excuse to beat up Edward.
Yeah.
Because he's been waiting for an excuse this entire movie.
And so they have a little tussle, and Kim goes like, "Go away. I've broken up with you. I don't love you anymore. Leave." And Jim leaves and goes off and gets drunk with his buddy in the back of his buddy's, like, awful flame-painted van.
This is also after Jim had said, "You hurt Kim, get out of here, you don't belong here." And at this point, he's just completely given up on everything.
Yeah, and Edward, marches off and starts, popping tires on cars and tearing down all the topiary and, carving, demon topiary in front of the religious lady's house.
Chopping his clothes off with his scissors because this whole being human thing hasn't worked out for him.
Boy, I know your feelings on that one, Edward. He's just running around, and someone calls the cops because, he's running around chopping down plants and popping tires on cars, and, okay. So, of course, it's, crazy white women going like, I need to call the cops,
Mm-hmm.
And so all of this intersects, with Edward running around trying to hide from the cops and the neighbors looking for him. And he ends up back at Kim's house because the entire family has gone out to look for him. And Kim has stayed at home in case he came back. And of course he comes back because where else does he have to go? Mm-hmm. And that's where they have their beautiful little moment together where she's like, hold me. And he's like, I don't want to hurt you. And she gently puts his scissors around her,
It's a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
Like he wants to show affection to her, but he can't because he doesn't want to hurt her. And she's just, okay, we can try, I suppose.
Yeah. But the thing is like, it's one of those things. And of course it's a Gothic romance. Mm-hmm. So they both know it will never work. Mm-hmm. But as he's standing there holding her and remembering the day his father died and all that kind of stuff, he looks and he sees the swerving van because drunk driver, coming down the road, and he sees Kim's little brother crossing the road and about to be hit by the van.
So he plays hero, tries to pushes him out of the way and accidentally cuts little Kevin here.
But again, it's just a tiny superficial nick. It's not, he doesn't actually really injure Kevin, but Kevin is scared because
he just almost got ran over by a car.
Yeah, he's just crossing the street, and then all of a sudden he's, sees headlights, and then he gets tackled, and then all of a sudden something cuts his face, and, Edward's over him being like, hey, I'm scared, and, like, are you okay? And, and then there are neighbors around being like, get off of him, and, like, he's like the 8-year-old boy or whatever, he's going to be terrified. And
yeah, this really gets the town against Edward and just gives Jim more of an excuse to start just punching him in the face.
Yeah, but of course, Edward fights back at this point because he, like all of us, has had enough of Jim. Mm-hmm. And he ends up slicing Jim's arm in self-defense. And Jim is like, no, screw that. You're a monster and whatever. And Kim does the only thing she can do, and she tells him, like, run back to the mansion. It's the only place you might be safe.
Which gets us to our big final scene in the mansion.
Yeah. Can we, this is one of the few times I will say shout out to the cop. Because the cop definitely tries to do Edward a solid.
Yeah, he's not here. Go home.
Well, he fires his gun into the air and tries to make people think that he killed Edward. But the only problem is that Jim doesn't buy it. And goes into, Kim goes in to make sure. Because she's like, I have to see if he's really dead or not. And so she finds Edward alive, and then she's like, don't worry about it. Everybody thinks you're dead. And then Jim shows up with a gun, which, where did he get a gun? And then I remember America, so where couldn't he have gotten a gun? And Jim's like, no, I didn't believe you were dead. I came here to make absolutely sure you're going to be dead.
And then, as he's on top of, as Jim is on top of Edward, pounding him. Kim,
you want to rephrase that?
Yeah. Let me rephrase this, because this is not that kind of movie. So yeah, Jim tackles Edward and starts punching him in the face, and then Kim just carries a loose piece of the ceiling that fell, knocks Jim off, grabs Edward's arm and says, "Leave or I'll kill you myself."
Which, good for her.
She has had enough of his BS. You are not going to hurt my friend.
Yeah.
And he slaps her and pushes her off, like, totally. And that's the final straw. He hurt him.
I mean, first of all, we do not hurt Winona Ryder. She is a treasure. You leave Winona Ryder alone. So, Edward does the only thing Edward knows how to do, and he stabs that boy in the stomach and shoves him out a window. Proper Disney death.
Only we have a body, we have blood.
Yeah, and apparently Tim Burton got a lot of flack for that. Like, the fact that Jim actually died. And I want to tell you, I have been angry for the last however many years it's been since this movie came out, because I still, to this day, am angry that he didn't land in the hand. That hand topiary is right there, and he doesn't land in it. That's like filmmaking 101, my dude. It's Chekhov's topiary. Come on. How to, like at the time, like, he's out the window, and I'm like, he's gonna land in that hand. He's gonna land in that hand. And then I'm like, what? Why didn't he? Like, to this day, every time I watch that movie, I am beyond livid that Anthony Michael Hall's body does not land in that freaking topiary. Like, you want to do something with AI? Redo that scene where his body, like, lands dramatically draped over that hand topiary. That is the only problem with this movie. This is an absolutely note-perfect movie. I have no problem with any scene in this movie except Anthony Michael Hall's dead body not landing in that hand. Like, seriously, no lie, if I ever meet Tim Burton, that is the only question I have in my mind.
And there's this big, this is the point of no return for either one of them at this point. Like, Edward just killed someone. There's no going back to this town for him.
Yeah, she knows that they're coming to kill him. They're never going to leave him
alone,
And he just looks at her because he realizes they're coming to kill him, and he's not going to fight back. Like, he doesn't want to kill anybody else. Like, Jim did something wrong.
He hurt Kim. He slapped her.
But the thing is like, the rest of the townspeople are just misguided. Like, he doesn't actually have anything against them. So you can see it that he's just going to let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And he looks at her and he just says, goodbye. because he knows that this is the end. And as long as she's safe, that he's
okay.
going to let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it that just, I think that that's the thing that gets me, is that he's like, okay, you're safe now, because I know that the townspeople won't hurt you. You know, they're not evil. Jim was evil. Jim really had some stuff going on in his brain. The rest of the people are just weird gossips and whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And now that they've seen he's killed someone, whether or not they just drag him to the police or whether or not they take vengeance there, that's it for Edward. Mm-hmm. You know, he's not gonna be very long for the earth, you know? And so, you know, he's saying his goodbye while he can. But I do like that Kim is a bit smarter.
Yep, she hugs him, tells him that she loves him, runs downstairs, grabs
they have that little kiss, which I love.
Yeah. She runs downstairs, grabs one of Edward's spare claws scissors from the inventor's workbench, and says, Edward's dead. The roof caved in on him, which we saw the caved in roof. It fell on Edward. He's dead. And it happened right after he killed Jim. They killed each other.
Yeah. And I love that she goes, you can go look, but, you know,
you're not going to find anything.
Here's a hand.
Because even if they did go up there, they would see the collapsed roof. They would see the gun.
Yeah.
So they could probably put it together. He shot the roof. The roof caved in. He stabbed him as when it was happening. You know, which, yeah, smart on Kim for grabbing that extra scissor hand and saying, yeah, he's dead. And look, I got his hand.
I like that the townsfolk are not very perceptive, because if you actually look, it is a similar hand to Edward's, but it's like an earlier model or something.
A prototype at best.
Yeah, it's something like that. Or maybe it's from a different machine, because, you know, the inventor got the idea for Edward from like a chopping machine that was in the kitchen tools or whatever. And but also it's just like covered in cobwebs and rust and stuff. And there's no blood on it, which, like, if he'd have just stabbed Anthony Michael Hall, like, there'd probably be blood on it, you know, like if they'd been fighting. Mm-hmm. Because he had cut several people that night. You know, he'd cut Kevin, he'd cut Anthony Michael Hall, he'd cut Kim, you know. So it's covered in cobwebs and rust. There's no blood on it. There's no, you know, and it's a slightly different model. And I love that they're just like, yeah, well, okay, whatever. She's got a thing, and like maybe it's dark and they're just not paying close enough attention or whatever. But
they don't care. They just wanted a show, and as soon as the show's over, they all left.
Yeah. And so they all leave and they're like, yeah, whatever, I guess he's dead. But also, the other thing that gets me is that the entire town's like, yeah, whatever, Scissor Guy's dead. Everybody back home. Okay, but fast forward to a year later and it's roughly Christmas time. And it starts, quote unquote, snowing. Except we see what the snow looks like from the town's perspective, which is just this like plume of ice snow stuff emanating from the mansion on the mountain. Like, I know that we're being told this story from Winona Ryder's perspective
as an old
woman.
Mm-hmm.
How long has he been doing that? Did he wait until everybody died except for her?
Who knows? And where's he getting the ice from?
Well, yeah, also where is he getting the ice from? But the thing is like, don't you think if you had lived in the area when the scissor dude came to town, and suddenly in the area where it doesn't snow, weird snow starts appearing from that mansion every Christmas, you'd be a little, you know?
Maybe they just don't care anymore. I mean, who cares? I don't know.
Or do you think the town is just like, as long as he stays behind those gates, we're not going up there?
Possibly, because they don't want to get stabbed either.
Like, you think like every generation of kids that gets born in that suburb, and like everybody that moves to that suburb is just told, like, look, we don't talk about it with outsiders, but don't go into Stabby Mansion. Like,
there's a madman up there. He killed a kid. He'll kill you too.
Yeah, like, look, sometimes it like snows weirdly from there. A lot of times you're going to hear snippety, snippety, snip and see like leaves and flowers and stuff like drift down from there. Just don't go in there. Don't try to peer into the gates. Don't like, just give that place a wide berth, okay? Weird goth Johnny Depp lives in there. And as long as you leave him alone, he'll leave you alone.
And Winona Ryder's little granddaughter says, well, why don't you go back up there and visit him if you haven't seen him in so long? And her says she doesn't want to ruin the memory. He
doesn't age, and I don't want to age either, you know.
In front of him, you know. Let him have the memory of me being young.
And we see that he does remember her young because he's carving statues of her dancing,
mm-hmm.
which is pretty. That's nice.
Yeah.
But like, you feel really bad because it's like
he's going to be alone forever up there.
Yeah.
But maybe it's for the best, because could anyone understand him that won't use him or abuse him?
Well, I mean, at least like one family did. Well, part of one family, two members of one family.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the little boy really cared either way.
He just wanted something cool to show and tell.
Yeah, and the father was just the worst.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's kind of, you know, it's a really beautiful movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it so much because for a while, Tim Burton was the only one keeping goth alive, I think, in mainstream American film. Now we've got Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah.
Which is an upgrade. I'm gonna say it. I said what I said. I mean, Tim Burton was good at the beginning, but then I think he got a little too up his own rear end.
Smoking too much of his own supply.
Yeah. And so I think he's kind of lost it. Ironically, this film understands the point of the Addams Family better than Wednesday did. I'm not kidding. This is, you know, the rather normal, sane, but goth-looking aesthetic in the middle of the suburbia is the weird and frightening place.
Hmm.
And that's honestly what Addams Family has always been about. So it's weird how he nailed basically Addams Family here, and yet once he got a hold of Addams Family as a property, absolutely lost the plot on it.
I mean, the most memorable thing about that is Jenna Ortega's dancing.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've still not seen Wednesday because I can't bring myself to it. I've seen clips and reviews, but I can't bring myself to do it because it's so off.
I mean, supposedly they're making Beetlejuice 2 with Winona Ryder and Jenna Ortega, so we're gonna find out if he still has it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
Since that's his own property, and he should understand it, but we'll see.
We'll see. So, let's ask the question, Kiki. Does Edward Scissorhands have the magic?
Yes. I mean, with the exception of you drop Anthony Michael Hall in that hand topiary, perfect film.
This 30-year-old movie still has it. This still holds up. It's still a great movie. It's Tim Burton at his best. It gets all. It's still good. It's still good. And yeah, this is a great movie. You know, if you're, I know this is going to be sacrilege for some people, but if you're tired of watching The Nightmare Before Christmas every year, you might want to watch this one.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
Or watch them both.
I'll watch them both. Make it a double feature.
Yeah.
So let's move on to next week. What better way to celebrate the holiday season than Charlie Brown, Snoopy, and the Peanuts gang? Unfortunately, all of those movies are property of Apple TV now, except for one. And we will be reviewing that one movie next week. It's the only movie that was made by 20th Century Fox. It's the only one that Disney owns. The Peanuts movie from 2015. The attempt to bring the Charlie Brown gang into the modern era. We are going to see how that goes. We're going to see how that has held up over the last almost 10 years. So, yeah, going back, celebrating the holidays with Charlie Brown and Snoopy, as it should be.
Yeah, and I haven't seen that one yet, so we'll see how it hits me for the first time.
All right, so come back next week for the Peanuts movie, and we'll talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye.
Don't let the magic stop here. Join our conversations on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Rewatching the Magic. We are on the X, formerly known as Twitter, at Rewatch the Magic. And new episodes are available every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com. Remember, the magic is for everyone. It only stops if you let it. Podcasts are fun,
but there's work to be done.
We encourage you to get involved. Here are some organizations we support.
The American Civil Liberties Union fights for the constitutional rights of all Americans. Find them at aclu.org.
The National Network of Abortion Funds helps people find access to safe abortion services. Their site is abortionfunds.org.
The Trevor Project provides a 24/7 crisis helpline for LGBTQ youth and education services for schools on LGBTQ issues. They can be found at thetrevorproject.org.
Or find a way to help in your area.